Hi, good evening. My name is Nikki Zimmerman. I am the proud president of the Fairfax County NAACP, and I would like to call this meeting to order. Our mission: the Fairfax County NAACP is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose mission is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, educational, and economic security of Black people and all people of color. Okay, at this time, we'll have a prayer from Religious Affairs.
All right, thank you. I'll bring one from the Unitarian Universalist tradition. Life is complicated and uncertain, and gorgeous with some things we can count on. It has seasons of struggle and seasons of delight, and sometimes the two blow in and bloom simultaneously, like now, maybe always. And we are here together, all of us from different corners of the world and different families here, breathing together, questing together, holding each other through it all, laughing and singing in the face of it. If there is a journey to liberation, if there is a way to live resurrection, I think it is like this. May what holds us in bondage to death or loss or hurt or sadness or literal heartbreaking limits be released. And what gives us life, hope, joy, rebirth, feel invited to claim us. And may we claim it. Sinking our roots down into what grounds us, reaching toward the sun, flowering into this season, all of whose traditions witness to life more abundant, claiming us, after a season of loss and winter struggles of heart and mind and spirit. And may we open our hearts to the abundance of creation that surrounds and sustains us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next slide, please. President's report. We have been busy, you all. We have been very busy this month. We are planning our college day. We are planning our college day for June 7th. Where we will be at the Gum Springs Community Center. That's in 2 weeks, a week and a half from today. But that is an all-day event for us. 11 to 2, we'll be giving out the scholarship for our former president, Michelle Leet, who we lost last year. We will have colleges there. We will have organizations there. We will have military there, recruiting. So we ask that you all come and support. This week is a very busy week. I'm going to kind of be bouncing all over the place right here. On Thursday, we will be at the Burke Library from 6 to 7:30 for a community conversation on how has this election and current policies affected the Black community. So far, we have a good number of people who have signed up. This is going to be in person, but we're also going to be live streaming. So the questions that will be asked have already been sent in with the registration. However, if you are there in person and you have a question, we were while you're there. So our panelists are Delegate Rosea Henson, Delegate Karen Keyes-Gamarra, City Councilman Anthony Amos, and Social Justice Advocate Krista Jones. So that will be a very informative conversation. We will talk about the issues and we will discuss a way ahead. Next slide, please. Let's see what else we have going on this week. So next Monday, I'm not sure if you all are aware, we put out a press release on Fairfax County Police Department and the foot pursuit policy, some things about it we did not agree with, and how they reverted and did not take the recommendations of the one Fairfax roundtable that was created to discuss these issues and come up with solutions for how we, function in the county, with one of those functions being how we function with the police department. So we're going to be talking about some of those issues there. So I encourage you all to register for that. That will also be live streamed on Facebook. And okay, we have that. We also have an event. We're not gonna talk about that right now, but we have an event with the I think National Council of Negro Women or 100 Black Women. Miss Evelyn will speak more to that. That is coming up in June, I believe. So we are very, very busy this month. We've done a lot in May, so much I forgot. But June 14th, we're also going to be at GMU for the Fairfax Declaration anniversary, 249 years, I believe. So we're very, very busy this month. Our sneaker ball, our inaugural sneaker ball, very excited to be working on this. As you all know, every year we have a gala. And this year, yeah, last year was very successful. We raised a lot of money for the branch's function. And this year we anticipate the same thing. So the theme for this year is the rebirth of DEI. Tickets are now on sale. You all can buy advertisements. So if you're a part of an organization or if you know an organization, we ask that can someone put the link to our sneaker ball into the chat? We're selling sponsorships, sponsorship opportunities. So if you have a business, if you know of a business, please send them the sponsorship. You can buy a table. We have tables on sale, single seats on sale. We have a member's price. I believe we have a member's price and a non-member's price. I'm not quite sure, but it's going to be a dynamic event. And we're going to have a good time like we had last year. We had an excellent time last year, but we are looking for sponsors. Right now, we are in need of sponsors. We are in need of ticket sales. And thank you all for those of you who took the time out to go ahead and get your ticket and then get it out of the way. But we do need sponsors. We are selling ads. Next slide, please. Now we will have our secretary's report from our secretary, Michael Bryan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for so many people showing up tonight. I think word is getting out that NAACP has substantive meetings, not just reports, but great speakers every single time. So thank you for being here. Two things tonight. One, I just want to let you know that we did send out the minutes for both March and April's general membership meetings. They went out yesterday in the notice of this meeting. And I would entertain a motion and a second and an approval of those minutes if there are no discussion. Do I have a motion?
I would make them, can I do it, Mike?
I think you can, sure.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes aforementioned by our secretary, Michael Bryan.
It's Les Shockley. I'll second that motion.
Thank you both. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I love it. Any opposed? No opposed. Minutes have passed. Thank you. That's 2 months now, and we're all caught up. The other thing I'd like to mention, once again, in June is coming up. And if Lenore, I might be able to share my screen briefly. Let me know if I can do that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I wanted to just make sure everyone saw the notice that went out also this weekend about the piano lesson, which we don't just want to deal with. This is a heavy play, but we don't want to just deal with, we want to have fun once in a while with the NAACP. We got a wonderful invitation by, can you all see this? Can you
We
see
cannot. And would you like me to share the email that was sent out?
No.
President Zimmerman, you're having some technical issues.
I'm not talking.
Sure. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You were, Mike, I can share the email that was sent out if that's helpful.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. That'd be great. That'd be great.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes, beautiful, okay. Beautiful. Better than mine. we sent out a notice about the fact that First Stage in Tyson's Corners is partnering with the Fairfax County NAACP for a one-night only discount tickets for members and their guests to see their presentation of August Wilson's The Piano Lesson. Wonderful award-winning drama. Was made into a movie last year with Samuel Jackson and others. They're offering $35 tickets if you use the code NAACP Fairfax. Either go online and do that. It's only for that night, June the 13th. It's Friday night. And we're going to have a little reception ahead of time for all of our members who arrive, plus their guests. Will be talked to a little bit by the folks at First Stage and give an introduction to their whole process. And then we'll have a wonderful evening at the show. Miss Evelyn, our first vice president, and I will definitely be there. And we hope to see a lot of our members and their friends turn out. So this notice did go out, I think it was on Saturday. So we've got a couple weeks to think about it, but it's going to be a great show, and we're thrilled to be partnering with First Stage, an award-winning theater, Tony Award-winning theater. And that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have our committee reports. We're going to start with, I hope you all take a screenshot because this is the order that we're actually going to go in. So we'll start with budget, criminal justice, education, housing, freedom fund, legal redress, membership, political action, religious affairs, scholarship, and then we're also going to add our economic development. We have economic development chairs now. So we'll have economic development go last. Since we have a packed agenda, I ask that you all stick to your talking points. And I hate to do it, but I'm going to need you all to do a 3-minute time because we have so much to cover, and we still want to be able to give our guest speakers the time that they need to give us all the information that we should have. So I'm going to limit the committee chairs to 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes, to give your briefing, and then we're going to move on. So we'll start with budget, then criminal justice, then education. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Nikki. Good evening, everyone. I'll just briefly recap the fiscal year 2026 budget that was adopted by the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors on May 13th, earlier this month, and provide you just some highlights that impact us as an organization. This was a $5.7 billion budget that was approved. One of the highlights from this budget was that the real estate tax, which had originally been submitted as an increase of 1.5 cents, was actually reduced by a 1/4 cent for $100 assessed value, so that for property owners, an average increase of $500 is expected based on property assessed values for this year. The controversial meals and beverage tax was approved at 4% by the Board of Supervisors and will go into effect in January 2026. Given the environment of austerity that we're in, this will provide new revenue source for the county. In addition, a transient occupancy tax was increased from 4% to 6% to promote tourism. The NAACP branch, our branch, supported more funding for housing and the school budget. In the current fiscal environment, we took some satisfaction in the fact that there was a 1/4 cent increase to 1.25 cents to support affordable housing. That was about $8.5 million impact. We're still see a challenge in meeting the 10,000 unit goal by 2034. As far as the school budget, the Board of Supervisors did not approve it in full, but the school board did manage, despite the not fully funding the collective bargaining agreement, which would have given a 7% increase for employees, the school board took their approved budget and provided full-time instructional and operational staff at Fairfax County Public Schools a 6% increase plus a $1,000 bonus for returning employees. And for part-time staff not represented by the union, office staff and administrators received 5% raises. So there were concessions made, but there were some wins there as well. Significant backlash. I'm giving this example of where people coming out and expressing their opinions can be effective. And there was significant backlash when there was a reduction of middle school after school programs, which the county executive reinstated after public hearings by people expressing their opinions. I say this because, as we move along, we did not quite win on all our advocacy issues, but gives us something to work for in upcoming years. We had supported increase of funding for the co-responder program. And although there was no increase, at least the dialogue started, and we're going to work on investigating and assessing that program further over the upcoming months. In addition, we had supported the public defenders program, a small increase in funding for there. Did not achieve that. And again, these remain live issues that we'll continue to work for. So all in all, there's some wins, some things that we weren't able to accomplish, but we'll continue to work forward as, in the upcoming months and next fiscal year. That really covers the highlights of my presentation, President Nikki.
Thank you. And we will move to Matthew, co-chair of Criminal Justice. And then we'll just move on to Marquise without any hesitation or input.
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate that on Monday we're holding the community conversation about the foot pursuit policy and how that all came about. And so I think it's going to be a good opportunity to both learn about the foot pursuit policy and what happened, how FCPD basically stopped working with the community on that, and also find out about the One Fairfax Roundtable and the equity action teams, which is going to be a mechanism going forward in the county for dealing with equity issues. And yeah, and it'll be an opportunity to also talk to some of the people who are actually on the equity action team. Pastor Walton will be there from Voices Black Fairfax, and Brian Kennedy was a really valuable on the equity action team. He was the public defender. I'll drop a link to that in chat. And then I also had a conversation with Supervisor Loss, Chief of Staff. We're looking to hold an expungement clinic. They were also looking to do one, so we're going to collaborate on that. It's tentatively scheduled for September 13th at Hibble Valley Community Center. And that's it for my update.
Yes, as stated, we're going to just keep rolling without me doing the introduction. So as I said, education, then housing, just keep it rolling.
Can you hear us?
Say again?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Marquise.
Marcus, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. President Zimmerman, you just want to go to the next and maybe they'll get their audio working?
Yes. Mary, we'll go to Mary and then we'll go to Miss Evelyn.
Hi, give the report on our housing committee. Toward the end of last month, we organized testimony at the budget hearing for affordable housing. And I just got a nice letter from Jeff McKay. I think he sent this letter to everybody to testify, but put a note on it that said, "Thanks for all your advocacy. You educate us." So that's why we do that little organization of people to give their lived experience testimony at the budget hearing so that the supervisors can hear what it's like on the street. We also held a home ownership forum for people of color at Gum Springs last April 26th. And that was pretty well. A lot of activity lately has been in testifying at housing planning commission and at board of supervisor hearings where there are many suburban subdivision neighbors opposed to a affordable housing project near them, not in their neighborhood, but near their neighborhood. And it's been kind of a difficult experience, but we've gotten a lot of people to testify, and all of these projects are moving forward. And we're thinking of maybe collaborating with a regional group of housing advocates on developing a little manual on, how to deal with these situations, which can be very emotionally draining for churches, places of worship, or neighborhoods that are having affordable housing places built and are encountering this kind of very vehement opposition from the neighbors. So wait, I'm working on a couple of policy issues. There's an opportunity that doesn't come along very often in how planning is done, and to get more equity into the development aspects of planning. And I'm commenting on a lot of those drafts, and I think that's really an important thing to do right now. They've got drafts on land use, transportation, environment, parks, et cetera, et cetera. And affordable housing is, of course, part of land use because it's built on land, and trying to get more equitable rules into the planning process for building affordable housing is really important. I also want to mention Jerry Connolly. He was our congressman in the 11th district who passed away. I went to his wake last night. A number of NAACP people were there, and I watched his funeral online this morning. He was a very good friend of affordable housing. He started the Penny for Affordable Housing. He bought older apartment buildings, kind of rent stabilized affordable housing, although we don't use that term here. But he did a lot of things. He inspired a lot of things that are still struggling to complete in Fairfax County. And I really was sad to see him pass away so soon. So I guess that's it. If anyone has questions, I'll answer them. Oh, one good thing. I just sent out an email to a lot of people. I'll send one to X project-based vouchers in Fairfax County. If anyone is looking for affordable housing, next week is the time to apply for a voucher. This is where you get really affordable housing if you meet the income limits. And I'd encourage you to spread that around. Anybody you know who's looking for affordable housing who might qualify has to apply during this week, June 2nd to June 8th. It only opens up about once a year.
Thank you, Mary. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Evelyn. I am going to share 3 pieces of information with you. The community forum that President Nikki spoke on is going to be June 29th. That's this Thursday, Burke Library. First
29th.
29th, excuse me, 29th. Les Shockley third vice president and myself will be the moderators, the facilitators. We have a set of questions that have been sent in from our people who plan to attend. And then we've also created a list of additional questions just to keep the conversation going. Our main mission is to hear from the community. How has the current administration affected your life? And then we will hear how the politicians, the delegate, we have two delegates, Delegate Karen Keys Gamara, Delegate Rosea Henson. We have Councilman Anthony Amos, and then social media Krista Jones. So we're looking forward to that session, and I think it should be very informative, and it is free to the community. The second thing I want to share with you is our progress on the Freedom Fund. We're starting to have our meetings on a bi-weekly basis. And what we're talking about now, right now, we have $1,646.83. We've sold 7 tickets and we have 1 table. We have 1 commitment for $3,000, and we're reaching out to one of the Board of Supervisors to determine how much he is going to sponsor us for. But stay tuned. We're going to ask for a push. We're really going to start pushing this out starting July 15th. We're sending additional informations or resubmitting our emails to say, hey, here's a reminder, please. We're really looking forward to your sponsorship opportunity, and please respond. So we're getting a little bit of traction, and we're going to pump it up starting June 15th. And finally, the Women's Health event. We have partnered with, like President said, we have partnered with a National Coalition of 100 Black Women of Northern Virginia chapter. This is a totally free event that's going to be held on the 18th of June from 6 to 8. There'll be gift cards, light refreshments, and at the Jerry Highland Center. And the topic is women health issues. We're going to have a cardiology specialist come in and talk about the differences that are recognized with women who are experiencing heart disease. So this is a really great opportunity to understand heart challenges for women moving forward. I look forward to you attending, and it's not required, but if you would like to know more, please, feel free to join us. And if you have any questions on any of the 3 areas I spoke on, please send me an email or send a chat. Thank you. I guess next up is either education or legal redress. Neither? Okay, how about membership? Jasmine and Jesse?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Jesse Ernest here, membership co-chairperson. Jasmine's not on tonight. First thing I want to say is for all you new members who are on the call, welcome. And so if this is your first time experiencing a general meeting, you get a sense for the power, the dynamism of our chairpersons. And virtually every committee, I'm sure, is looking for additional members. So if you're interested in any of these committees, you see their contact info here on the screen, just please let us know what your interest is. We'd love to have you participate in any way. As everybody knows, once you become active, the more likely you are to contribute and expand the membership and invite your friends and your family. So I'll say that first. The next thing I'll say is that our membership this time, sort of year to date, or this time last year, we've had a 50% increase in membership. And so just want to thank everybody. I think we all know that everyone is a member of the membership committee, whether you know it or not. But I find that most of our members are coming from contacts that we all have, some relationship. So if you know someone, right, please reach out to them and let them know about us and pass on our info. We'd love to reach out to them. The next thing I'll say is that, this is the 5th year anniversary of George Floyd's assassination. right? May 25th, 2020. And at that time, I remember just the level of interest that happened not only in our organization here, the Fairfax County chapter, but so many organizations. And if you're like me, I remember I got calls from various peoples at different parts of my life that said, you know, they just reached out to me, right? Hey, I see you, Jesse. I recognize you, Jesse. You know, how can we? And so it's the 5th year anniversary. And I think what we have going on in the White House is a whole nother kind of a reason to get involved. But again, I'm just coming back to the membership piece. And for those people you know out there that are interested, please send them our way. Next, the last thing is our membership committee meets once a month. Our next meeting is coming up tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So yeah, I'll put my contact info in the chat. We need more members. We need every idea you have to increase membership. So please reach out to me. We need your help. Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and get to EdCom. I believe Marquise he's able to speak through the Tara's account.
They are unmuted. Marcus, we can hear you, yes.
Nikki, can you hear Tara?
Yes.
We just heard you say that, yes.
Okay, I'm not sure why you can't hear Marquise. He is here with me. Try one more time. I don't know why it's not picking up his voice.
Okay, we're gonna have to move on.
Okay, go ahead.
So we're gonna go to legal redress.
Put it back on mute.
Legal redress, Meredith, are you here? Okay, political action, Ms. Lenore.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I would like to thank everyone who took postcards. We were able to mail 200 postcards to Fairfax County citizens, reminding them of the upcoming election. We have a couple of voter registration drives planned for the summer, and we ask if you know of any events that are happening where we might be able to set up a table, let us know. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to the scholarship committee, and after we go to scholarship committee, we're going to go to our economic development.
Religious Affairs also has a quick announcement.
Yes, but you all are going to go last because you're going to introduce the speaker.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Tara Smalls. I'm a co-sponsor of our scholarship committee. We're very excited to share that on June 7th. We will be presenting our winners for the Michelle Leet Memorial Scholarship Program, Memorial Scholarship. It's our first year doing it on behalf of our past president, Michelle Leet. Many of you know who she is, know that name. And so we were able to establish a memorial scholarship in her name. We're going to be giving away a $1,000 scholarship and 3 $500 scholarships. Students from various schools across Fairfax County Public Schools are represented in that. We did have 11 submissions of students. We're hoping for more, but we for this inaugural year, we only have 4 awards going out. The students who do not receive the actual scholarships will also be receiving recognition for their submission of their applications. All 11 students have in fact been accepted to a college or university or post-secondary education pursuits. All of them met the criteria of a 3.0 or higher, as well as submitted their information and recommendations from a community member, a school member. So we did ask for quite a few things from these students. They had 2 essay questions. So we're going to be honoring them on June 7th at Gum Springs, as well as having a celebration entitled College Day, where we currently have approximately 10 schools, all 4 branches of the military and other community and civic organizations, to include union representatives and unions in Northern Virginia who are sponsoring and working along with us. And so we're excited to have that special occasion, the main focus of the scholarship recipients, as well as giveaways and just a day of celebration of education in Fairfax County. I believe the time will be from 11 to 2 at the Gum Springs Community Center. So that's where we stand right now for scholarship. And we will hope to start to encourage fundraising throughout the year so that we can increase the number of scholarships and the amounts each year to build on behalf of our beloved Michelle Leet. That's all I have for scholarship.
Economic Development is a new committee. I put some notes in the chat, which pretty much summarizes what we've got to tell you this month. The focus is going to be on the parts of the county that are struggling, where socioeconomic indicators are pointing in the wrong direction. And the idea will be, how can the NAACP be a catalyst that can help generate investment, new businesses, and jobs? And I'll have more for you as we move along.
Thank you. Before we move to our religious affairs, their updates, and then to the speaker, there are a few quick points that I want to make. Number one, as Jesse mentioned, our membership has increased. However, there's a lot of work to be done. So if you all can spread the word that we are constantly recruiting for new members of the NAACP. What we're also going to be attempting to do is have a, and I've spoken very briefly, but I'm letting all of you all know, is we can't call it a D9 challenge anymore. I can't remember what we can call it, but what we do is we see how many members of the D9 we can get to join the branch. And at the end of that challenge, the winners, the organizational winners, they receive different things. And this year, in addition to what they already are going to receive, they're also going to get $500 scholarship for the student of their choosing. We want to do the same thing for churches. So we want to do a congregation challenge, if you will, to see how many churches we can get to sign up for the NAACP. As you all know, the church is really the backbone of the civil rights movement. That's where all of the secret meetings were taking place. That's where all the planning and facilitating was taking place in the church. So we need to bring that culture and community back to the fold and have congregations right here with our Religious Affairs Committee and with the NAACP as a whole, and try to bridge that partnership back in with them, with the congregations accepting the challenge and coming back to the fold. So what I would like for all of you to do, since there's a number of you on here, we have 52 people on here, if you all can put into the chat the name of your church, the lead pastor, a good email, so that we can email them with the challenge information when we do have one, and a phone number. If you all can put that in the chat, Miss Pam, would you have somebody record those? Record that? So you can get those? Okay. And we can take that and start building and spread the word as well. If you know of a church and you have a good email for them and a good number and the name of their lead pastor, that will be great. Now to the scholarship committee.
Or just Nikki.
Yes.
I was going to jump in and make sure synagogues, mosques.
Yes, all of it.
As well, right? That's just, churches, synagogues, mosques, any house of worship.
It's all covered. It's all faith groups. It's all covered.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now really quickly, we're going to talk about the scholarships, because we are looking for, to be able to give out, as much money as possible to graduating seniors. So I encourage you all to, if you have it within you, to start sending those donations in and annotating it. If you do a donation on our website, annotating that is for a scholarship, and we can put that to the side for next year. Let's this year we were only able to give one $1,000 scholarship and three $500. Next year, why not? Why can't we do three $1,000 and two $750s? But it's going to take the donations of our branch and other organizations to do so. So I implore you all to spread the word that, with the congregation challenge and with the donations for the scholarship, that will help us to be able to get more kids into get more kids scholarships. And then with the congregation challenge that we may be having, we can get as many faith groups back into the fold as I believe in the NAACP intended, because again, the church is the backbone of the NAACP. Lastly, Freedom Fund. Please spread the word, Freedom Fund. I will leave it at that. Thank you, and I will hand it over to Ms. Pam and the Religious Affairs Committee to do their updates for their committee, and then transition us to our illustrious guests. Thank you very much.
I have just a couple of announcements. We are having a cleanup at the historic African American cemetery site at Bull Run Regional Park, and that will be on June 7th from 9 to 12. And we'd love to have you come, or if you know any young people who need service hours, that would be a great thing for them to do. And I will put the link to the sign up in the chat. The other announcement is that we have our Juneteenth commemoration on June 21st from 3 to 5 at Bull Run Regional Park, and there will be information on the website about that. So I think now Eliza is going to be introducing our speakers.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I am going to just briefly say a thank you to John Dister, a member of our Religious Affairs Committee, who contacted and arranged all of our speakers. And I'm going to introduce the topic, which the title of our presentation tonight is Lift Every Voice and Sing. And you'll see that there's a question mark there. The question that we're trying to answer today is, how have people of faith responded in the past, and how are people of faith going to respond today? And we have first Professor Mary Beth Mathews of the University of Mary Washington, and I'll just let you go ahead, Dr. Mathews, if you are ready.
Just needed to unmute myself. Hi, I guess I'm going first. I am a professor of religious studies at Mary Washington, and I just want to talk just a few minutes about the religious worlds of enslaved peoples in America. As a professor who deals with a lot of different periods and people, I will try to confine my remarks to the 15 minutes allotted. And I want to let you know, first off, what I'm arguing. And that's that enslaved African Americans came from a variety of religious backgrounds, and for the purposes of moving forward, interpreted Christianity in distinct ways that help us think of Christianity not as single, but plural Christianities. If you think about the effects of slavery, it meant a horrible tragedy and trauma for enslaved Africans with a land that was really integral to their religious traditions. And for their enslaved descendants, it meant living in a society that attempted to control everything about them, including their religious options. Hopefully, I can do a quick summary of how they managed to fight back. It helps to know a little bit about indigenous African traditions, the beliefs and rituals and practices that enslaved Africans brought with them on the Middle Passage. The people who actually survived the horror of the journey came from a variety of tribes and groups in Africa, and their religious practices reflected that diversity. Most generally, African religions held that the universe was created by a creator or God. It could be monotheistic, one God, but in some groups it was polytheistic. The common denominator here is that Africans believed that the universe was created by something supernatural, but they tended to stress that there was a porous boundary, if any, between the physical world and the spiritual world. If you think about Euro-American religions, you tend to think about them as having a more, not porous, but a stronger boundary between the two. In African religions, ancestors could act in this world to help their descendants. There were also malevolent spirits that tried to bring misfortune. And the fluidity between the worlds worked both ways. Humans could get in touch with the spirit world if they had proper guides, like shamans, and these leaders could call on the spirit world to inform them or to intercede on their behalf. There were nature spirits and human spirits in African traditions. Nature spirits were divided between sky and earth. So things like the sun, the stars, the moon, lightning, wind, thunder, rain. Earth spirits included animals, insects, rivers, trees, plants, diseases. Human spirits were usually people who had died a long time ago, and they formed the basis for stories that cautioned against extreme human flaws. One of the Ashanti stories told about how God used to be right close to human beings, and there was a woman who was grinding grain in a mortar and pestle, and she kept bumping her elbow against God, and so God moved up. And the woman didn't like this. And so she asked her sons to bring her more pestles so that she could build the mortars up and up to get closer to God as God kept moving away. And the story goes that she was one mortar short. And so she told her sons to grab the one that was on the bottom and hand it up to her. And you can imagine what happened. Everything fell down. And that is why people are here on earth and God is in the sky. A lot of the remnants of these belief systems have managed to survive better in Caribbean religious practices, like Santeria and Vodun. And in those religions, individuals can get in touch with those spirits and be possessed by them, who then pass their knowledge on to the congregation. If you think, though, that these types of traditions and rituals and beliefs only made it to the Caribbean, you would be wrong, and I'll get back to them in just a moment. But I want to add a quick note that Islam came to the New World with enslaved Africans. Scholars believe that probably 20 to 25% of enslaved Africans were Muslim. And they know this in part because of the lists of enslaved people sometimes include Islamic names. You'll see Muhammad, you'll see Abdul, you'll see Ali. And there are also documents like family letters and church records that are written by white people who give accounts of enslaved people who pray 5 times a day, for example, and facing the east. One white Southerner told of, quote, an old African named Philip, who was a very intelligent man. He used to tell us about the customs and religion of the country he came from. He was not a pagan, but a Mohammedan, which is what they used to call Muslims. He greatly interested us by going through all the prayers and prostrations of his native country. So Islam came to the United States through enslaved Africans. Some of them managed to adhere to their faith in Islam for some time, but we don't have evidence that they managed to pass that faith along to their American-born descendants. More commonly, they could not maintain their faith here. There is an example of a man, Omar ibn Said, who was from what we now call Senegal, who died in 1864, but wrote an autobiography in which he says, "When I came to the Christian country, my religion was the religion of Muhammad, the apostle of God. May God have mercy upon him and give him peace. And now I pray our Father in the words of Jesus the Messiah." There is a great controversy about Omar ibn Said, with one group arguing he did indeed convert to Christianity, while there are other scholars who believe that he actually just continued his Islamic faith while pretending to be a Christian. So most of enslaved Africans and their descendants ended up becoming Christians. And I just want to make sure we understand that we're not talking about Christianity that was force-fed to them, but their own interpretations. It wasn't inevitable that enslaved African Americans would convert to Christianity. In fact, in the earliest years of slavery in North America, many white Americans didn't pay much attention to the religious beliefs of Black people. In fact, they thought that Black people were heathens who just practiced some kind of magic or superstition or polytheism. And white people often held that Black people, Africans, were unable to construct their own governments, to be rational, to be literate, or even to be spiritual. But religious assistance wasn't really at the top of their to-do list. Many white Christians at the start of slavery in North America weren't interested in converting Black people at all. But the Great Awakening, a white religious awakening, changed that. Preachers who were white began to urge their flocks to embrace faith and to seek to convert others. And this is where many Black people were encouraged to become Christians. I don't want you to think that these white ministers did it because they cared about the eternal souls of Black people. They did in some respects, but they also believed that enslaved people would be more docile or civilized. That conversion experience quickly backfired on some white people. We have lots of evidence that enslaved people who accepted Christianity were very quick to discern what the notion of salvation might be for them, that they were equal to white people in the eyes of God. Some enslaved people believed that if they were baptized, they would be set free. They had a pretty straightforward take on this. They looked at white Christians and said, "You're free. If I become a Christian, then I'll be free." And it forced some white preachers to draw up statements to inform their converts that becoming a Christian was good for their soul, but would not free them in this life. Southern white preachers made sure that they preached a sanitized version of Christianity. The contents of their sermons were supposed to avoid any topic that might incite African Americans to rebel against slavery or to interpret Christianity as being something that would liberate in some way. If you're familiar with Christianity, you know where I'm heading with this. White preachers in the South delivered a message that largely omitted mention of important biblical figures. Talking about Moses, for example, was taboo because he led the Hebrew slaves out of bondage. The Sermon on the Mount that Jesus delivered was also problematic. If you say something like, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth," it's very easy for someone in the congregation to understand what that means. The Apostle Paul's letters became an avenue for sanitized sermons, but Paul had a few landmines in his own texts. Southern white preachers relied heavily on Paul's admonition in Ephesians 6 for servants to obey your masters, but they had to dodge around another famous Pauline directive. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. That's Galatians 3, in case you want to look it up. Southern states made it very hard for enslaved people to access these texts, especially after Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831. There are debates about how much Southern states enforced the laws that they passed at this time that outlawed literacy for Black people, making it a crime to teach an enslaved person to read or write. White clergy and slaveholders insisted on teaching a very watered-down version of Christianity. But that didn't stop Black people from seizing religions for themselves. And this is something that I believe people all over the world do. They interpret their religious texts for themselves. And for enslaved people, there were ways that they looked at the theologies in the Bible and said this emphasizes deliverance and justice. They took the ring shouts of their ancestors, remember the African influence, rituals that involved dancing in a circle and using call and response to praise Jesus. They did these ring shouts at night and in brush arbors, shielded from white prying eyes that allowed a measure of privacy. I'll drop in the chat a link to a video that was done at the Library of Congress. A group of people from the Sea Islands of Georgia, Gullah Geechee descendants, who have preserved the ring shout tradition. Enslaved Black people used spirituals to communicate all sorts of messages. One was for community and for possibly escape attempts, but you can also read in the spirituals all sorts of religious messages. There was no easy separation between God and this world, hearkening back to the African influences. The songs that they sang talked about angels and messengers from God delivering knowledge and assistance. And that message of deliverance was constant in these lyrics. Depictions of Jesus are there as the leader of a victorious army. So I want to leave room for my fellow panelists, but I'll just give you a few important conclusions. I often ask my students at the end of a lecture to say, so what? So what? Why is all of this important? Enslaved people adapted Christianity to fit their own understanding, especially given their background and cultural heritage. They used this belief of interconnectedness of this world and the spiritual and the supernatural, and they added a belief that they would be God's chosen people. This kind of belief continues up into the 20th century, where ministers talk about the surprise white people might have when they get to heaven and find out that Black people would be there. It has its antecedents in slave religions. They knew more about Christian scripture than white people understood them to have. They also demonstrate that they appropriated religion, that they weren't waiting for someone to give them permission to understand. They exercised religious freedom, influenced by their oppressors, but demonstrating their own agency, their own control. And it shows us that there are multiple understandings of Christianity. And I just want to end with a notion that there is no one Black church. There is no one Black Christianity. Black Christians may have many things in common, but it's an incredibly complex understanding of religion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mathews. Just a reminder that if you have questions, you're welcome to send them to me or put them in the chat. Our next presenter is Ms. Amy Marshak, who is going to speak about the Falls Church Episcopal's historical ties to slavery and white supremacy, and the research that they're doing to learn more about that and figure out next steps.
Thanks so much, Eliza, and good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. I'm going to share my screen, so we have some slides for you to help, because we ended up with a lot of material as we did this work. There we go. So good evening, everyone. I am a member of the Racial Justice Committee at the Falls Church. The Racial Justice Ministry is a couple years old now. We started it. Here is our mission statement. We are a ministry of like-minded Christians committed to the pursuit of justice and equality for all races, inclusive of intersectional populations, by identifying and eradicating racial barriers in the Episcopal Church, our community, and our country. Here are sort of our pillars of our work. I'm going to focus on telling the truth. When we started this ministry a few years ago, one of the first things we wanted to do is understand more of the story of our own church's history. As I will explain, our church is very old. We are the Falls Church because we were the church that was there when Falls Church was built. And so we have a long and complicated history that sort of leads us up to the present day. And so we wanted to really do more research into our church's relationship with race throughout its full history. So that we can better tell the truth and begin the process of coming to terms with that history and what that means for us in the present. So we proposed and have begun a very many year effort at this point into doing a comprehensive racial audit. And so it's going to have 3 sections. We've done at least the first draft of the first part, the 1730s to the 1860s, the Falls Church during the slavery era. The second part will be from the 1870s, so Reconstruction through the Jim Crow era into the Civil Rights Movement and more recent. And then part 3 will be sort of a contemporary audit. What are our practices now? What are the experiences of our community members with respect to race at the Falls Church? And so I'm going to be talking about our first publication, The Falls Church's Ties to Slavery from the 1730s to the 1860s. So as I start, I would want to address why we're doing this as a theological matter within the Episcopal Church. So broadly, the nationwide Episcopal Church has an effort called Becoming Beloved Community, which is the national church's long-term commitment to racial justice, healing, and reconciliation. The concept draws on the idea of beloved community that comes from American philosophers through really being popularized by Martin Luther King in a number of his speeches of what long-term reconciliation and healing looks like. There are 4 aspects of becoming beloved community, and the church models it as a labyrinth. You walk intentionally through these, but it's not one at a time. You sort of wind your way through all of them as they overlap one another. Which I think is a neat metaphor for it. So it's truth-telling, telling the truth about our churches and race, proclamation, proclaiming the dream of beloved community, formation, which is practicing Jesus' way of healing love, and justice, repairing the breach in society and institutions. And so our work doing this comprehensive racial audit in our current report, it sort of hits different ways of meeting these goals. The primary one is, as I said, telling the truth. There's proclaiming the dream, that we are acknowledging the things we have done and left undone and the things that we need to do to move forward. Repairing the breach. I think we cannot move forward without acknowledging the harms that we've engaged in and continue to engage in. And also practicing the way of love to help our community, our congregation move forward and become reconcilers and healers and listen to the voices of people that we have ignored in the past. And so that's what motivated us within the Episcopal Church to do this work. Getting to the substance of our report, we issued our report a couple months ago, maybe about 6 months ago now, just including a little background, not to cover, I will not cover anything Mary Beth covered. This is really the sort of the white person's religious history that overlaps. So during colonial times in Virginia, there was no separation of church and state as we know it now. There was the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, and then with the Revolution became the Episcopal Church because we no longer were Anglican. That was the established Church of Virginia. It was established in the sense that it was like totally intertwined with the state. The vestry, the governing board of the churches, was the local government at the time. So I think this is important to mention because the history of the Falls Church at this time is the history of Falls Church, Virginia, and the history of the region, because these were the county governments. The vestry at the time, so this basically like the local council, set the annual parish levy, which was a tax that was set in pounds of tobacco. That funded the rector's salary. It would build and repair church buildings. It would purchase land for the rector, and it would provide for the poor. So this was sort of social services of the time. The original wooden Falls Church was built in 1734. This is a lot more detail on this slide than probably anybody wants to know, but I think the interesting points are, for 30 years, Falls Church was in a parish that covered a lot of Northern Virginia: Loudoun County, Fairfax County, Arlington, Falls Church, Alexandria. The vestry of that parish oversaw the Falls Church and another church. George Washington and George Mason were both on the vestry, but they were members of the Pohick Church, which was the other church involved, which is still a church today as well. In 1765, there was a new Fairfax parish that also kept in Alexandria. And in November of 1766, the vestry instituted a levy of 31,125 pounds of tobacco for building what became the Falls Church and is still the Falls Church's historic building and Christ Church in Alexandria. All of this becomes relevant, as well as I'll point out in the finding section again, but the tobacco was farmed by the labor of enslaved people. The bricks that built the church were built with the labor of enslaved people. And the people who built the church itself, the brick building, were the enslaved people owned by members of the church. And so all of this is not just tied into the government of the region, but also into the institution of slavery at the time. In terms of one of the notes in describing this event that was suggested was sort of the churches have not always done the right thing in the way of racial justice. And I thought this was just an interesting background for everyone to have, that up until the Civil War and through the Civil War, the Episcopal Church in Virginia generally supported slavery as an institution. This sort of ties to some of what Mary Beth was saying. A number of Episcopal bishops argued that slavery was allowed in the Bible, so it's legitimate and not inherently immoral or sinful. Now, the slavery in the Bible was not chattel slavery, the way it was instituted, and not race-based slavery, the way it was instituted in the United States. So this was a really willful interpretation of what the Bible stands for, I think. The diocese's first 4 bishops and the majority of clergy owned enslaved persons leading up to the Civil War. And the Episcopal Church, unlike many other churches, did not take a stand on politics, did not take a stand on slavery or secession. They believed those were civil matters and not something for religious people to get involved in. And finally, the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia joined with other southern states to itself secede from the Episcopal Church in the United States to form their own confederate group of dioceses, confederate Episcopal organization. And then that church really supported the secessionist cause. So the Episcopal Church at the time was very much intertwined in the institution of slavery. So our real research, beyond that background, and there's a lot more background in our report if you're interested in it, was to look at the rectors of the Falls Church, so the pastors, the church leaders. There was really only one priest at a time. At the time, there was a shortage of priests anyway. Look at the rectors, look at the members of the vestry of the Falls Church, and understand more about whether they owned enslaved people, how many enslaved people they owned. So we looked at county historical records. We looked at Ancestry.com. We worked with the historiographer for the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia, and we looked at a bunch of secondary sources as well. Before I give our conclusions, I just want to note that we acknowledge that, number one, we are amateur researchers. We are people who do not have, unlike Professor Mathews, we do not have PhDs. We did the best we could with the resources we had. I am a lawyer, not a historian. So we know we cannot precisely count the number of enslaved persons owned by Falls Church linked clergy and vestry members. Complete data does not exist, let alone are we able to find it. But we wanted to find these people and count and present the number of enslaved people who were affected, not as an accounting exercise, but to honor and recognize the humanity of the hundreds of people who were enslaved by the leaders of our church. I will skip some of this. Basically, we had a bunch of challenges. The data sets are not complete. We used a lot of tax records and we used a lot of probate records. People would give their enslaved persons in their will to their family members, and that's one way that and those probate records still exist. That's one way we can find them. Tax records, bills of sale are a little bit harder for us to find, but I'm sure there were more. The short answer of the issues that we found is we are likely way overcounting the number of people, but this is what we were able to account for without a professional genealogist or historian and without the funds to hire someone to do that. So here are our results. So we found that rectors of the Falls Church held at least 96 people in bondage, and vestry members held at least 651 people in bondage. As I said, enslaved persons built the historic church and the materials out of which it was built. The taxes that supported the building and of the church and the incomes of the rectors were paid in tobacco produced through the labor of enslaved persons. And there are likely people alive today whose ancestors were held in bondage by our leaders at the time. Here's a little more detail on the members of the clergy. We were not able to find probate records for all the rectors. We were able to find local probate records, but some folks were a rector for a period of time and moved somewhere else in the country, and we were not able to track those records down. Rector Brian Fairfax of the Fairfax family worked for a Barbados-based slave trader for a short time in his youth. And of the 96 enslaved persons we were able to identify, we have the first names of 66 of them, according to the sources we found. All of the names of the folks that we were able to find are in an appendix in our report. I did not include it in my slides here in the interest of time. But when we presented the information to our church, we gave time to review all of the names, and including some really powerful notes that are included in the records about different people. So I do encourage you to take a look at that list if you have time and interest. So for the 651 persons enslaved by members of the vestry associated with the Falls Church, we did not count people enslaved by George Washington or George Mason. Again, they were not really members of the Falls Church, and we wanted to focus on the people most affiliated with our church, though we acknowledge they were also very large slaveholders. What we found is pretty much almost all the vestry members from this time period held people in bondage. We were not able to find probate records for everyone, but at the time it tended to be the most prominent people in the community were members of the vestry, and so many of them were slaveholders, prominent white people in the community. So we know the first and last names of 260 persons. And we know the first names of another 303 enslaved persons. The 260 persons, they were enslaved by the Fitzhugh family on the Ravenwood land grant, which took up a lot of the land in the immediate area of the Falls Church. And so there are pretty good records from that family particularly. So we have all this information, and as Mary Beth said, so what? What are we going to do with this? We got great advice when we started this project to not bring up the ugly if you weren't going to do something meaningful with it. And so sort of what are we doing? We're starting first with an annual service of lament. Our first service is on June 22nd at 12 p.m. and I'd be happy to share further information about that if anyone is interested in attending. We're hoping this becomes an annual thing. I think one piece I wanted to mention about our church that makes us a little unique is for folks who, I don't know why anyone would know this history, but it's an interesting history. In the early 2000s, the Falls Church was a very large, very conservative Episcopal community. The majority of the membership chose to leave when the Episcopal Church recognized gay marriage and allowed a married gay bishop, not in Virginia, but Virginia agreed with that decision in Vermont. once that happened, the majority of the Falls Church's community chose to leave the Episcopal Church. They wanted to take the building with them. After a multi-year legal fight, the building stayed with the Episcopal Diocese. And so we have a smaller, unusually young, and I would say on average more progressive church community than you see in many Episcopal parishes. And that population, that lack of we have some wonderful older church members, no offense to any of the older members in the audience here, but the families who would be offended by this work do not really exist at our church, which gave us freedom to do this. And I've heard from a lot of other churches that they don't have this kind of freedom. And so having this service of lament, we're starting to do work revisiting our official church narratives in our brochures on our website and our church tour to include more of the church's full history. We've been seeking grant funding to do further research. And we're starting to talk about, as a community, how we should seek out and build relationships with the descendants of people enslaved by the Falls Church, the Falls Church's leadership. This is really a question of, for us, what are we open to giving up and bringing in people to have their voices be heard who have been affected by our church. And their ancestors were probably part of the church community as enslaved people were brought to church, we think, with their enslavers. So that is the question that we are posing right now and do not have an answer on with this. And then, as I mentioned, again, we are doing further research into more recent periods of our history and how the Falls Church and its leadership participated in race-related issues, both in the Episcopal Church and in local politics as well. And so I hope I kept my time okay. And I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Amy. We are going to, I'm struck by I really love how we've been building up with understanding some of the history, this focus on, I'm struck by the focus on the people, learning their names. That's a very tender and important thing to, I think, a lot of us, is the names and who people were. Our third presenter is Reverend Dr. Lakeisha Cook, who is going to offer some concluding reflections on what can people of faith and faith communities do now in this pivotal moment. She is the executive director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. And I have been getting a few questions. Thank you, everybody. Please continue to send them in. And Reverend Dr. Cook, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be able to share space with all of you today. I just popped some slides up on the screen. I'm going to try to keep this succinct. I do recognize that, the hour is growing late and we've gotten such great information. So I'm just going to expand on some of the things that's already been shared. Again, I'm grateful to just be with Professor Mathews and Amy and to be able to just wrap up the conversation. And as I frame this time, and thank you, NAACP, for the opportunity to share, just by way of introduction and calling in Indigenous spirit and energy into the space, the Maori people, who are the Indigenous people of the land of New Zealand, when they're entering a space for the first time, they feel like there's three very important pieces of information that they should share. Their place, the place where they're located, or a place that they hold near and dear to their heart, their name, if there's some significance to their name, and really speaking their intention into the space. So just to briefly introduce myself using that framing, my place that I call in, I am not located in Fairfax. However, a place that I call in always is my home of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, which is a part of the DMV. So I feel like I'm a part of you all, even though I'm not physically located in your area. But my place where my feet is planted today and where I live with my family is Richmond, Virginia. I speak Richmond into this place so that you all can send some energy, positive down 95, because we are under a boil water advisory again. So right now I don't have water that can be used for hygiene or used for cooking or just to drink from unless we boil it. This is the second time we're going through this calendar year. And so it's a little rough when you have families. So just send energy, especially for people who have babies and elderly. It can be a little bit tough. But my name is Lakeisha. Last name is Cook, middle name Sharice. My daughter shares the same middle name, and she connects me to my purpose and my larger intent, and even my intention as I hold space. I truly believe that we have the power to change the world, and it's my intent to use my energy and my time in this place that we call Earth, trying to make this better, not just for me, but for those that are coming after me. And so as I share with you on today, as we're having this conversation about the role of the church and really talking about the role of religion when we're talking about policy and advocacy, I just want to speak just some light and energy and power in this very difficult, chaotic world that we're trying to navigate right now. There's a lot that's going on all at one time. And I just feel the importance of being able to just remind us with some words from our ancestors of the power that we possess. I believe that we have great power politically. I believe we have great power spiritually, and sometimes we just need to be reminded of that. So I'm just going to allow some ancestral voice into the space and just lift up some lessons that I've learned as I've been doing this advocacy work, and really just expand on this, what Professor Mathews has already framed as the so what, like what are we going to do now that we have this understanding, or hopefully we're starting to really think more intentionally about the role of faith as we're doing this advocacy work, as we hear President Nikki saying, look, we're trying to get the church back active, the congregations back active, people of faith back active into the work that we're doing. Let's just be reminded of the power that we possess. And so as we're looking and we're tapping into that power, we want to first look at the power and be reminded of the power of community. When we're talking about the work of justice is done more powerful when it's done as a collective work. It's not a solitary endeavor, but it's one that we can do more powerfully collective, so that we're looking to not just join together with people who work along beside us in the organizations that we're already connected in, but really looking to even expand on those connections. The great Grace Lee Boggs, if you've never heard this name before, write this name down. This is someone that you should look up. She was a powerful woman who fought for justice. She really fought really hard in the Detroit area. She worked along the Black Power movement, and she always emphasized the importance of an individual's place in the justice movement and how that collective activism. And so she reminds us that we never know how our small activities will affect others through the invisible fabric of our connectedness. In this exquisitely connected world, it's never a question of critical mass, but it's always a question about critical connections. And so when we're talking about doing the work of justice, it is about really finding those ways to connect our work with other people who are doing the work. There's so many things that seek to try to divide us. And there are so many things that we do hold different, even when it comes to our belief systems. But I know that there are things that do unite us. And that, again, when we join our voices together collectively, there's really nothing that we can't accomplish. I work for Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. If you're unfamiliar with us, we're a state-based justice advocacy group. And this is our mission statement: to engage people of faith and goodwill to advocate racial, social, and economic justice in Virginia's policy and practices through education, prayer, and advocacy. I came upon this work back in 2020. I joined the organization as an organizer to work in criminal justice reform. And they brought me into the organization to really galvanize the faith-based voice, or the faith voice, in abolishing the death penalty. This was a work that had been done. They were working on abolishing the death penalty for decades. There were great advocates like Michael Stone, Virginia for Alternatives for the Death Penalty, the ACLU, so many groups that were working on the abolition of the death penalty for many, many, many years. And so when I joined the fight, there was a great foundation that was already laid. There were some faith voices that were already in the fight, but there were some faith communities that had not quite been tapped into yet. And so when I came in, I'm a Baptist preacher, licensed and ordained. I went to Virginia Union, one of the best schools in Virginia, went to seminary there. I have a lot of friends who are pastors. And when I came in and I started looking at the landscape of how the work was being done, I noticed there were some missing voices in the fight. And I said, I think there's an opportunity to really go out and educate and really talk to people about the connection between lynching and capital punishment, and really start talking about and framing this conversation the way that they had always framed it, but just amplifying it a bit so that people really understood the racial justice piece to this fight. And so we were really able to galvanize that Black clergy, Black faith voice in the fight. We were really able to pull people of faith from many different faith backgrounds together. And I believe that collective faith voice that we pulled together in 2021 is what helped us push abolition across the finish line. And so Virginia becoming the first state to abolish the death penalty in the South, a major feat. And I know it couldn't have happened if it were not the collective voices that joined together. And so that's just one example of the power of the collective voice. But in these days, we have to be even the more intentional to join our voices together in unity. Again, there's so many forces that are seeking to divide us. And there are so many things that maybe we don't agree upon. But I believe that there are some things that we can agree upon. But it takes some real work and some intentionality to get people together and to have those conversations, to find those places of commonality so that you can continue to advance the work of justice. At Virginia Interfaith, we work really hard to work in a nonpartisan way. We work really hard with the bills that we do to have not just a Democrat, but also to have a Republican patron on every bill that we put forward in the General Assembly. And I will say that once we find things that people can find commonality in, it really becomes a more easy fight for us to get people to be collective and pushing forward good policy. For example, this last legislative session, I still have a passion for criminal justice reform work. I always will. We pushed a bill to eliminate the indiscriminate use of youth shackling in the court systems. A lot of people didn't even realize young people were still being shackled in the courts. And so again, it became this education moment of us being able to really say, hey, this is happening. Come on, people of faith and goodwill. Don't you think we should stop this? And once we started educating people, we were able to get bipartisan support. We almost had like unanimous votes all across the General Assembly because people were able to find some places of commonality in order to still fight for justice. But again, it takes us to really be able to be intentional in really finding those moments and being intentional about holding space to have conversations with people. And so again, it's about that power of community. One of the guiding principles that pushes me in the work that I do, and my daughter, I'm so glad that I hear her now saying it. It's only taken, I don't know how many years for her to catch on. She was like, yeah, this is one of my family's guiding principles. But it's the principle of Ubuntu. Ubuntu means I am because we are. It is about really saying that I am not like fully human if I am disconnected from other humans. It is about that collective power of community. And if I win and you don't win, that means I don't win. So how do we push forward together to really push this spirit of community and Ubuntu into everything that we do? And again, that's about being intentional to not allow even those differences that may come up in our different faith beliefs or differences of even values at times to block us from finding those places of commonality where we can join together and fight for justice. And so again, it is about the power of community and being willing to do the hard work to stay unified. I pull in another voice of the great Audre Lorde, who reminds us, in our world, divide and conquer must become define and empower. And so again, it is that intentionality to not allow division to come in such a way, because if we continue to move apart from one another, we're never going to find justice for people. And so it's about how do we fight to make sure that we stay unified. So it's the power of community. But not only is it the power of community, it's also the power of perspective. Everybody has their own perspective and opinion, but the important thing is that we don't allow those places of disagreement to become an automatic place of disconnection. Can I still hold space and have a conversation with you, even though we may find places where we disagree with one another? Now, I'm not saying and trying to minimize it and saying it's an easy thing to do, but what I am saying is we've got to push past this thought that we can only share space with people who believe exactly what we believe and share exactly our same perspective on every single topic. It has to be some intentionality of broadening our base and really being able to hold space to have multiple perspectives, because multiple perspectives, even though it can sometimes be uncomfortable, it absolutely makes us stronger. My board that I work with right now at Virginia Interfaith, I'm talking to them about, okay, again, can we be truthful? Amy, we talked about truth telling. Can we look around the room and really be honest about the missing voices in the space? Who's not here? And once we recognize and acknowledge who's not here, how do we start intentionally pulling people in so that we have those multiple perspectives? Because I'm not made better and sharper as a leader if I only surround myself with people who think just like me. I want somebody to help me, let's mess it up. Let's muck it up. I say that all the time. Muck it up is such an interesting way to say it. But let's kind of get in there and really talk to one another and wrestle with some things so that we can continue to grow. There's a power of bringing your own perspective in, but also power in being able to hold space for other perspectives and really being able to lean in and listen to one another in a real way. Now, I'm not saying, listen to people if people bring different perspectives and it becomes like dangerous or harmful for you to start holding space and listening to someone or giving space for someone. I'm not talking about dangerous and harmful rhetoric. I'm talking about being able to just hold space for people who might be a little bit different of perspective, especially as we're talking about how faith can come together in this work of justice. People of faith have difference of opinion about different things. However, that doesn't mean you can't find some commonality in places to work together. So again, that power of perspective being such an awesome and powerful thing, and really that intentionality of holding the space even when the difference of perspective comes up. There's a story that's told often, and I hear it over and over again in justice spaces about a group of people who were experiencing an elephant for the first time as they were in a village. And they're experiencing this elephant, and the people who were experiencing the elephant weren't able to visually see the elephant. They could only touch the elephant so they could figure out what this elephant was. So you have this group of people touching this elephant. They can't see it, but they're trying to figure out and describe what this elephant is. And so the person that was touching the tail said, the elephant is like rope. The other person who's touching the ear said the elephant is like a fan. And the other person that was touching the trunk said this elephant, again, is like a solid pipe, or they were touching the tusk. Each person was having this different experience of this elephant, and each one thought that their experience was the collective experience. But what it really was is everybody needed to listen to one another so that they could have a fuller understanding of the elephant. We need to have people who are having different perspectives of this elephant so that we can have a greater understanding of this world in which we live in. So there's a beauty in the power of community. There's a beauty in the power of perspective. And there is also beauty in the power of purpose, really staying true to the purpose that we're called to hold. In these times, it is becoming more and more difficult. A lot of organizations are trying to figure out, are they going to start changing who they are, changing their mission statements as DEI continues to be under attack? Even saying the word race seems to be charged in a lot of spaces, but this is the time for us now, I believe, not to falter, but to stand 10 toes down and being exactly who we are called and created to be. Because if we're not able to acknowledge, Amy, I'm going back to that truth telling, if we can't acknowledge the history that we come from, but not just the history that we come from, but acknowledge what's happening in the present moment, if we can't tell the truth about it, it's going to be very hard for us to continue to move forward in justice work. Wonderful James Baldwin, we bring his voice into the space. He says, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And so it's about really acknowledging what it is that we're seeing and not bowing away from it. And so I bring up this wonderful data that's coming out of the elections from last year. And I'm not going to say what I see when I look at this data, but this is talking about the turnout. And when you disaggregate the turnout by race, and it's looking at locality. So these are the people who were registered and eligible to vote, and how many people in these different racial groups turned out to vote based off of location. So as you're looking at this turnout, particularly as we're talking about civic engagement, as we're moving into this pivotal election year where we've got a governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, House of Delegates, the entire House of Delegates up for election, what do you see? And then what does it mean? And if we can't tell the truth about what we see, and then allow that truth to help us push us into action, then we're never going to live into the purpose that we're supposed to live into. So again, it's about really holding true to this work that we are called to do and really holding true to the purpose that we are called for. And I believe that we have the power in order to be and to move mountains. I believe that we are capable of accomplishing great things. I believe that if this world can be better than we see it right now, we're working on, we're talking about working in faith communities. I forgot I put this slide in. At Virginia Interfaith, we're working with faith communities commit to being 100% voting congregations. And so once you commit to be a 100% voting congregation, you get a banner that you can put up at your church, put it up outside, telling your community that you're engaging in, you believe civic engagement and you believe that voting is the way to go. We're doing Souls to the Polls. Again, we did it in Richmond last year. We're going to do a couple up in Northern Virginia where on the Sunday that people can go out to vote, really getting faith communities to commit to go out and take people to the polls. So we believe that, again, not just being content with what we see now, but knowing that we have the power to dream beyond what we can see now and dream a better place. So I encourage you, as I just wrap up, I'm going to let Frederick Douglass wrap us up with these words. I believe that we are called to be the thunder. I believe that right now is a time in which we need thunder. Frederick Douglass said, "Oh, had I the ability, could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule," me too, "blasting reproach," me too, "withering sarcasm and stern rebuke, for it is not the light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder." So I encourage all of you to continue to be the thunder. As I was listening to your committee reports, I'm like, yep, there goes the thunder. So keep thundering and keep making noise and keep collectively moving toward this work of justice so that we can continue to find justice for all Virginians. And so that's it. That's all I have. And so again, I'm appreciative for the time of sharing.
Thank you so much. We just got so much goodness from all of these presentations, and I got direct messages with some questions. So I'll just try to synthesize them, and we'll go back to the first presenter, Mary Beth, Professor Mathews. We have a question on did rebellions by enslaved persons in Haiti, the colonies, or new states explicitly draw on religious themes?
Yes, is the quick answer. So Nat Turner's Rebellion is one of the most famous rebellions, although historians believe there were many more that may not actually have been recorded. For fear of instigating more. White people didn't really want to advertise that Black people, enslaved people, were rising up against them. Nat Turner's Rebellion is kind of a tough nut to crack, though, because our only sources are sources written by white people who had a particular reason for informing the rest of the white public that Black people, especially Black people exposed to religion, were somehow more dangerous than others. But from the Confessions of Nat Turner, again, written by a white man, there is evidence of Nat Turner being very much conversant in the Bible, having had religious experiences, being spoken to by God, he believed, having seen signs, and using those signs, employing all of this as a reason to go ahead and rebel. In Haiti also, there's evidence that enslaved people did use religion as part of the reasoning for rebelling, whether it was to bring messages to others or to interpret religion in different ways. Religion and rebellion could go hand in hand, which is an ironic idea given that white people were so busy pushing Christianity on enslaved people as a means of social control at times.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. It's a couple part question for Amy. One was asking to clarify, so first part of the question, asking you to clarify what a service of lament is. And we saw that in one of your slides that you told us about the service of lament, and wondering if there's a view for the future that's more along the activist vein for your church. And then just kind of tacking that on, I know this is like multiple parts, but the labyrinth of the beloved community model that you showed us, how does that tie into any of this? Sorry if that was a complicated question.
No, that is, I will do my best. And if I forget, I'll come back to you on what the parts were. Okay, so the first part is, what is the service of lament? So this is our first time doing it. We've heard of some other churches have done similar things. The idea of it is that the Bible teaches that we can't move toward peace, transformation, or reconciliation without going through sorrow, mourning, regret, and lament. Lament being feeling sorrowful and sad and guilt and all of those things for the things that we have, the wrongs that we have done. And so our service, we're in the midst of planning exactly what it's going to look like. There are going to be some different Bible readings, reflections, and songs throughout the service. I know we've talked about reading the names of the people who were enslaved as part of that service. I don't know if it will be in the midst of the service or an end to the service or have it printed. I'm just not sure we have nailed down that detail yet, but that's sort of the idea of it. And to take an intentional time annually to maintain a focus on this history and its continuing effects in the world. And so that's sort of the goal of the service of lament. Second question was other activist things that we're intending to do. Is that it, Eliza? Great. So the second question is, we sort of have two tracks that we're trying to follow on that. One is, how do we use our historic space as a place of community and coming together and providing it as a venue for folks who we are aligned with on these sort of racial justice issues. And we have a very big building in the heart of Falls Church. Part of that having a very big congregation not that long ago is they built extra space in the building. So how do we use that space positively? One thing we do is we host the Falls Church's annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day events in January. So there's a march through Falls Church City organized by other organizations within Falls Church, like the Tinner Hill Foundation. And then they use our space for speakers or workshops or that kind of thing. So one is a hosting function. And the second is that we're still sort of figuring out, how do we tie into other ongoing racial justice work? We do not think we should reinvent the wheel. We do not think we are going to come up with the best ideas, but there's a lot of work being done in an interfaith way that maybe we can tie into in different ways. And so how do we best fit? Again, our congregation is not enormous, and the folks who are called to focus on our racial justice work is still a subset of that. So we've been testing out different things. The answer is, but there is a goal. We're moving toward it. We're still kind of new and we're figuring it out. But I see there is a question about housing projects, so I will get in touch with Mary on that. The third question I forgot. I'm sorry, Eliza.
It was, I'm not sure that it was really along the same lines. It was just a notation of the labyrinth symbol that you had. If there's a brief way to describe that, if not, we can move on.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share my slide again so people can see the labyrinth while I talk about it. There it is. So the idea of the labyrinth is there are these 4 quadrants of the becoming beloved community. Can people see this okay? Is this big enough? Okay. Of the becoming beloved community structure that is telling the truth, proclaiming the dream, practicing the way, repairing the breach. And if you follow this labyrinth, it doesn't walk in a circle to the center. The labyrinth is actually like a very common Episcopal thing at the Virginia Theological Seminary. There is a labyrinth on the ground there that people can walk and pray as they walk through the labyrinth. And it's about mindfully following along the path. And this path, as you see, it winds around and around and around. It does not take you to the center, but it winds around the quadrants. The idea being that you do not just go through 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not a set path. Once you've told the truth, you can proclaim the dream, repair the breach, and practice the way, and you're done. But there are layers to this, and you have to sort of walk through all the different aspects of it at different times as you wind your way through. I don't know if I've answered your question, Eliza. Did I?
Yes, no, that's great. Yeah, I have several questions that I've been trying to figure out how to synthesize them best. So I have a question for Lakeisha. Sorry, I've already forgotten your last name, Reverend Dr. Cook. Which is, you spoke about the concept of Ubuntu and the power in bringing your own perspective and holding space for other perspectives. And how would you, so there's one for people of faith who are part of a congregation that are maybe more conservative or less, more resistant. There is the option of finding another congregation. For people who are not planning to do that, do you have any advice, or does your organization have advice, or on how to kind of like spread that in an organization that's more resistant rather than leaving? Because certainly leaving is an option, and there are lots of organizations, churches and synagogues. And does that make sense?
It does. I don't think it's a complex question, so I don't believe there's a simple answer to it. Every organization and congregation and faith group is different. For some, there may be an openness to dialogue of difference of opinion and perspective. For others, there may not be as much openness for, difference of perspective and dialogue that way. And only you will know if that openness is there. And only you can be able to, only you can determine for yourself how much of a value that is for yourself. It's very difficult. And this is going to sound crazy that I'm going to say this, but I'm just going to say it, when you're having a conversation with someone, really being clear on what is the goal of your conversation. Is your conversation to help change a person's opinion, or is your conversation to help deepen relationship and connection? Because sometimes if you go in with the goal of, I'm trying to get you converted over to my way of thinking, that just may not work and happen. And so really being clear about what the goal and the objective is. And, some conversations, it's just, can we continue to have the dialogue? And we may never reach a point of agreement, but can we continue to, even though we disagree, hold space to be in relationship with each other? So I'm talking about that, not really in the context of trying to find a faith community. That's more of a broader approach. That whole trying to find a faith community that aligns with your own values is its own conversation in and of itself. And only if your congregation or your faith community is open to that difference of perspective, because some are, but there are a lot that's not. So it's just, yeah.
Thank you. I think that was a great answer. I think that is, just a really personal thing for people. Do you, just as a follow-up, do you have any resources within your organization for people who have there's this specific thing that is happening in my congregation, or is it more about the interfaith relationships?
It's more about interfaith relationships. We do resource individual congregations too. So I'll put my contact information. So if there's a specific question that people have, they'll have a way to connect with us. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I got several questions that I think some and this is just for all the panelists. I think that you all have answered the many of the questions that came in that were kind of similar. There's a little bit more detail about the historical stuff that I think we're maybe, in interest of time. But I'd like to invite anybody to contact any of the, I got a question if there were, towards the beginning, there was a question about whether any of the presentations would be available to share information. If you have notes from your presentation or slides or whatever, if you'd like to share that, I believe that we could make that available to our membership. And just to put in a plug for the Religious Affairs Committee's Juneteenth devotional event at Bull Run on June 21st. The purpose of that event is pretty similar to what we've been talking about tonight, which is learning about the past, learning about people who made choices that were, really looked down upon at the time, but felt like it was the right thing to do in terms of pursuing emancipation, which was obviously not popular at the time among very wealthy people. And anyway, so I just put in a link in the chat about that event and invite anybody to attend that event. And if anybody has further questions for any of our panelists, please, you can email me or you can contact any of them. And I just really appreciate all the work that you put in and your time tonight. I think I've definitely have learned a lot, and I'm going to be thinking a lot more about my own beliefs and how to strengthen relationships with the people that I disagree with. Looks like we've got some applause here, some virtual applause. I will turn the time over to President Nikki to close us out, unless there's any other things anybody wants to say.
Well, I would like to say thank you so very much. This has been a very, very, very interesting meeting. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. So, and I'm quite sure everyone else had the same, share the same sentiment. So I want us to give a round of applause to our guests and to the Religious Affairs Committee. They did an outstanding job. Outstanding. So, Eliza, can someone from Religious Affairs close us out? I'll stay on for a few minutes after if anybody needs to talk to me. If not, good night, you guys. Close us out, Eliza. Oh, wait. Before you close us out, there are a couple of people who I would like updates from. We have Ms. Deborah Graves, who is the president of the Gum Springs Community Center Advisory Board. Then I think Carla Ochoa is still on here, who is the incoming president of FEA, and I think Mark Forrest is still on here. So we'll start with Ms. Deborah to give us any updates on what's going on at the Gum Springs Community Center.
Okay, Madam President, I do apologize. I want to apologize to Amy. I put in there about us having the community day doing her presentation. So Amy, please take my apology, because was not my intent to do it when you were speaking. But the Gum Springs Community Center Advisory Board will be having our annual Community Day / June 10th on June 21st. Anyone that would be interested in getting a table, I've also put in there the application. Just fill in the application and email it back to the Gum Springs Community Center Advisory Board. We greatly appreciate your participation. During that week, we also have a golf tournament that I'll be sending out a flyer. And we also have game night, and as well as a basketball tournament with our teams. So during that entire week, we'll have something going on to celebrate our Community Day, as well as our June 10th celebration. Our theme this year is building community, unity, and legacy. And we would greatly appreciate if you all could support us during that time, during the week of June 21st. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Carla, you still on here? Carla? Okay, Mark, are you still in here? Mark, Forrest? Okay, well, good night, everyone, and I'll stay on, I'm sorry, prayer. Did you do the prayer already, Eliza?
We had an opening prayer. We can offer a closing one, or we can
Yes,
close
please.
out. Okay, I'll offer that. Please pray with me. Take a moment. We are thankful for this time tonight. We ask for openness to new ideas, to learn from the story of Moses and the stories that have come before of emancipation, and please help us to follow the signs, to do the work that we are called to do. Amen.
Amen. All right, good night, everyone. I'll stay on if anybody needs me.